Sanhedrin Daf Kuf Yud Aleph Amud Bet and Kuf Yud Beis Amud Aleph. We have a Mishnah in Kuf Yud Aleph, and the Gemara is in Kuf Yud Beis. Seeing the invisible, Mi garam lahem shiaduru betocha. We have the din of the irani dachat, and irani dachat is when the majority of the city have been seduced into serving idolatry. At that point, the city is judged as a unit, and everybody inside the city is one unit, rather than individuals who've served idolatry. We have psukim in Parshas Rei about the irani dachat, and there's a very interesting halakha that emerges from it, which the Mishnah articulates, and that is that nichsei tzadikim shebetocha ovdim, the property of tzadikim, people who did not serve idolatry. It's only the majority of the city that served idolatry, but there's a minority who did not. Not only are the people put to death, but all of their property is destroyed. All of their property has to be burnt. And even the tzadikim who are not given a capital punishment, those tzaddikim, the righteous people who didn't serve idolatry, but their assets are burnt together with the assets of everybody else. But if they have assets outside of the city, those assets are not affected. However, the Rishaim, those that did serve idolatry, their assets, whether they're in the city or they're hidden somewhere else in a Swiss bank account, you've got to get the assets and everything gets destroyed of the Rishaim. Says Rabbi Shimon, Mipnei ma amra Torah nichsei tzadikim shebetocho yovedu. Why is the property of the tzadikim destroyed? The tzadikim did nothing wrong, and they're not punished. Why do you have to destroy their property? Rashi says in Erchin, even their clothes, they walk out literally naked from the city. They can have nothing. Not everybody agrees with that, but that's the degree to which everything they have is destroyed. Because, says the Gemara, says Rabbi Shimon, mi garam lahem shiyaduru betocha Matmonim. Why are these tzaddikim living in a town where the majority of the people there are of the Avodah Zarah? Why would they be living in such a place? You've got to be careful where you live. You don't live in a city where most of the people are immoral or most of the people are following a way that is going to be distracting to you and to your children. So why are you staying in that city? Usually the reason is because you have business interests. In that case, those business interests, lefichach matmonam aved, destroy those business interests, destroy the assets. An interesting idea. Well, we're punishing the business interests. So what exactly does it mean? And from there, there's a Tosefta that makes a famous Kal Vachomer. If the case is such that we have to destroy Maim Nichasim She'enam Lo Ro'im V'Lo Shomin V'Lo Medabrim, the property, the assets, they don't speak, they don't hear, they don't do anything. Shigarmu Tzadikim Ladur Ben Arashayim. But these assets were the cause of righteous people living amongst wicked people. Amara Chatuv Yisrafu, they must be burnt. Hamater Chaviro Miderech Chayim Lederech Mavet. If a person, God forbid, seduces another into immoral or activity which is against the Torah, Alachat Kama V'Kama, how much more so? It's bad enough a person doesn't keep the Torah, but to seduce others into not keeping the Torah, whether it's through what one says or what one says online or what one writes, if one's influencing other people to leave Torah, how much more so? Even inanimate objects are destroyed because they influenced people negatively. Shehei b'sreifa. The Mishnah's reason seems to be a little bit different. The Mishnah itself gives a reason and says, Lo yidbach b'yadcha mu'amah min acherim. You may not attach yourself to anything that's left of what should have been destroyed. Shekol zman sharasha'im ba'olam charonaf ba'olam. As long as there are wicked people in the world, there's anger. Hashem's anger is in the world. People often ask, Hashem seems to be angry at the moment. It's a few years now already. Hashem seems to be angry. What's going on? There are Rishoim in the world. As long as there are Rishoim in the world, Hashem is angry. Sometimes He subdues His anger, but the anger is there. Avdu Rishaim min ha'olam. Once you get rid of wickedness in the world, nistalek charonaf min ha'olam. Hashem's anger disappears from the world as well. That's why you have to destroy the assets as well as the people. Because of nistalku charonaf min ha'olam, we want Hashem's anger to disappear. So according to the Mishnah, it seems to be that these assets that belong to the wicked people and even to the righteous people, in the case of an irani dachat, are part of the influence of the wickedness. In the Gemara, where Rabbi Shimon gives the reason and says it's because these assets are responsible for the tzaddikim living in the city. But here there seems to be another element. It's not just that the assets were responsible for. The assets are part of the memory of the tzaddikim. It's a little bit with Mechia, like Mechias Amalek. You've got to destroy everything that could be any kind of a memory of Amalek. And it seems to me that what we have to focus on here is, it's not the asset itself. You see, there's a house, there's a car, there's a table, and it's got to be destroyed. Why? The owners have already been put to death. They don't exist anymore. There's a table, a beautiful antique table. Does that have to be destroyed as well? There's a golden Rolex. Does that have to be melted down and destroyed as well? Can't we sell it and use the money for tzedakah? No, you can't. It's got to be destroyed. Why? So the Mishnah says because it's part of Nistalech Haronaf Min Haolam, and Rabbi Shimon says because that golden Rolex was part of the reason that this, in the case of the tzaddikim, and certainly the Rishonim, stayed in the city. If it weren't for their attachment to their assets, they would have gone and lived somewhere else. That's what's keeping them there. And what seems to be, if we understand and analyze it deeply, is that what you've got to be able to look at is not just the object on the surface. You've also got to be able to look at the energy that surrounds an object. Just as a person has an aura, so an object has an aura. And a tzaddik can see the aura, can see the energy. It's not only tzaddikim, there are very sensitive people who are able to see energy. And they can actually see aura around objects, and it can be measured. There are now instruments that can measure the energy that an object radiates, and certainly a human being. So if you look at the golden Rolex or the antique table, what you see is not just the Rolex and the table. What you see is an energetic connection between that object and the person who lived in the city. You see that pull, you see that gravitational pull. You see it, you feel it if you're a sensitive person. If you can see energetically, if you can use what we've termed before as the Ein HaEmunah, to be able to use the eye of Emunah, the eye of the Neshama. If you can see the world with the eyes of the Neshama, not just with your physical eyes, you can see energy, not just see physical things. And you look at these physical things and you see the gravitational pull that caused a whole bunch of people to stay rooted in a city they should never have been living in. And it's that energy is there. Even if you now take away the owners are gone, but the antique table and the golden Rolex, you still look at it, still has that energy. It's that energy you've got to get rid of. It's not just the Rishonim themselves, it's the Rishonim because of their influence. It's the Rishonim, these wicked people, because of the energy that they radiate. And the radiation of that energy is not just them, it's also the assets which kept them rooted there. Those assets also have an energy that you want to get rid of. You don't want negative energy around you. This idea of it's not just you don't want negative people around you, or you don't want negative events. You don't want negative energy. It's important to rid yourself of negative energy. Often I've advised people to drop court cases and to drop Dinei Torah, if you possibly can, because it roots you in negative energy for years and years. Your whole mind and being is surrounded with negative energy. If you just move on, you can take all that energy and use it positively and rebuild and recreate and grow yourself and grow your assets instead of being bogged down in the negativity of a court case or of an argument, a machlokes, or in this case of Avera, when the assets use their gravitational pull to keep a person rooted in a place, whether it's a geographical place or a mental or moral place, to keep them rooted in a place they ought not to be. That energy you want to de-link yourself from, you want to detach yourself from. But for that you need to be sensitive, you need to be able to feel the energy of the people and the things around you, those that are radiating an energy that is uplifting and inspiring, and those that are radiating an energy that pull you down and that keep you rooted in places you don't want to be kept rooted in. We need to be conscious of that. There's a beautiful sifra on the parasha we just read in Parashas Vayikra, where Rabbi Akiva explains how a rovea and a nirba, an animal with which an avera has been committed, may not come on the Mizbeach, and we learn it from the Psukim, and the Sifra is discussing why you need a posuk. But what emerges so beautifully is he compares it to an animal with a mum, with a physical blemish. And he says that an animal with which an avera, a transgression, has been committed, is a mum she'eno galui. It's a mum, it's an imperfection, it's a blemish. And just as you can't bring an animal that's blind in one eye, you can't bring it as a korban, you look at the animal, you can see it's blemished. But if you look at an animal that's been involved in Avera, you can see the blemish as well if you use your energetic eye. If you use the eye of your soul, it's as blemished, it's even more blemished. That ability to see blemish even when it's not on the surface. Our eyes can only see the surface, but we know that the surface is such a small part of reality. What's really happening in the world is what's under the surface. And it's like that with world events. What's under the surface is what's important. It's like that with a piece of Gemara. It's what's under the surface that is important. And so with what we see, you're only seeing the surface. We need to develop the capacity to see under the surface, to see qualitatively, to see energy, not only to see physical things. That becomes really important. And we take this idea very much further, because Rabbi Shimon says, why is it that the property of tzaddikim have to be burnt? So he says, because the property caused these tzaddikim to stay in this town. Says Rashi, B'chol duchti darash Rabbi Shimon taima dikro. Why is Rabbi Shimon giving reasons? Because Rabbi Shimon holds dorshin taima dikro. You consider the reasons for halachot in the Torah, not only the halacha itself, but you go into the philosophy of it as well. Rabbi Shimon holds dorshim taima dikro. Asks the Tosfos Yom Tov, why? It's not Rabbi Shimon specifically. In this case, there's no halachic outcome of the reason. It's just a philosophic concept. Where does Rabbi Shimon say Dorshim Taima Dikra and others disagree with him is you can't draw halachic conclusions from philosophy. You can't try and figure out what's the philosophy of the mitzvah and now draw a halachic conclusion based on that philosophy. Rabbi Shimon says, Dorshim, you can do that, and others say you can't do that. But here, says the Tosfos Yom Tov, there is no halachic difference. When Rabbi Shimon says, why does the tzaddikim's money get punished? Because they're responsible for him staying in the city. That's a drosha for Shabbos. He's giving, it's a drosha, it's a philosophic thing, it's divrei musar. It's not a halach, there's no halachic concept, it doesn't make any difference halachically. Asks the Yad David, so what does Rashi hold? The Yad David is a fascinating person. Rabbi Yosef David Zinsheim. He was a French Talmud Chochem, a Rov, in the time of the French Revolution and Napoleon. And he was the first chief rabbi of the whole of France. And he was appointed by Napoleon. He was very close to Napoleon. And he headed what Napoleon set up at the time. He set up a Sanhedrin, so to say, a gathering of the Talmidei Chachomim and heads of the community of the Jewish people, which would be the Jewish Board of Deputies, so to say, as he set it up. And Rabbi Yosef David was the head, the Nasi of that Sanhedrin. And it's amazing because the Chassam Sofer gives a beautiful hesped on Rabbi Yosef David and says, as close as he was to Napoleon and to the government, it never influenced the way he thought. He always thought with the purity of thought, and he lived with the purity of Shmirat Halacha. In fact, the members of the Sanhedrin, it's Minyan Diyoma, asked him for a heter to shave during Chol HaMoed, because they're public figures now. They're members of Napoleon's Sanhedrin. And he paskin they're not allowed to shave during Chol HaMoed unless they're actually meeting with government officials. So he retained his absolute strict adherence to Halacha. And he wrote a sefer called Yad David, which is now available. In it, he brings the Pri Chodosh, and he brings the din in the Sifri that even the children of the tzaddikim have to be killed. And that's a very hard thing. Why are you killing the children? And the Pri Chodosh says, because the Sifra is Rabbi Shimon. And Rabbi Shimon is Dorish Tama Dikro. And what does Rabbi Shimon say? Why are they staying in a city they shouldn't be? Because of their money. Well, sometimes it's because of your children. Your children are in school, you don't want to move them. Your children have got friends, you don't want to move them. Your children are established, and so you stay there, even though it's not a good place to stay. Says the Pri Chodosh, so you see that according to Rabbi Shimon, if you hold Rabbi Shimon's din, then you extend this principle of destroying the money to even destroying the little children, says the Pri Chodosh, and the Yad David brings it, which means being able, this is very uncomfortable for us Western sensitivities. That means when you see with your eyes of neshama, you look at these children, Nebuch, and you see, yes, they're beautiful little children, but you see that energy that's pulling, the gravitational pull of the parents, causing the parents to stay in a city they shouldn't be. Causing the parents to stay. And how relevant is this today in our life? How many people are living in places they shouldn't be living? And I'm not talking about whether it's Israel or not. Just living in a city one shouldn't be living because the influence is negative. And you ask them, why are you still here? Well, the children are established, they're in school, we can't move them at this stage. Or I've got my business interests here. One has to be able to look with the Ein HaNeshama, and one is able to have to see that which is invisible to the eye. One has to see the energy, one has to see the pulls and the pushes, one has to see the aura around things, and make sure that one's life is surrounded not only by beautiful things that are beautiful to the eye, but also things that have beautiful energy that are beautiful to the Neshama.